cloud. Oh, let's see. Okay, we are all starting here. Wanted to introduce myself. My name is Brian Lang. I'm with BPG Home Inspection. I'm the chief inspector here in the Phoenix, Arizona market. I've been with BPG for over 10 years now, and I've been an inspector in the Valley for over 20 years and completed over 6,000 inspections, including commercial and specialized inspections as well, too. What I'm trying to advocate is a good understanding about commercial inspections with this presentation. Some people just don't understand the process and what it's actually involved, and that there is actually some standards that must be followed in order for it to be a commercial inspection. So I'll define what is a commercial inspection, how it can benefit you and your client, and how I can help you as a realtor with a commercial inspection following the ASTM guidelines. Okay, so the commercial property condition assessment, it follows the ASTM guidelines. It doesn't follow the ASHI guidelines or the INTERNAHI guidelines, and there's no state regulations. It's what we follow is the ASTM guidelines. It's a standard that came out quite a few years ago, and it's very specific to just commercial inspections. So what is a commercial inspection? Does anybody know? Anything over 4 for multifamily. So a fourplex is not a commercial inspection, but if you have me doing 2 fourplexes on the same property, it becomes a commercial inspection. The established ASTM guidelines. The purpose of the ASTM is to develop a good commercial and customary practice. So that means if I perform a commercial inspection and one of my inspectors who does a commercial inspection, you're going to get the same linear report that you'll get through me and him. So it's not like you're looking at 2 different reports and calling me, I can't understand this word, what's this being said on this report. So we follow the ASTM guidelines, so everybody's on the same page. So it's beginning, like I said, consistent reporting and pertinent content, reasonable expectations, and develop industrial baseline standards. What does that mean? The industrial standard baseline is how long things last, the observations of the inspector telling you if it's at the end of its serviceable life, how much life does it have left as well too. The PCA, you're going to hear this a couple of times going through this presentation. The PCA is the property condition assessment. That's what the inspector is writing up, the property condition assessment. The PCA also relates to the physical condition of the real property on a specific parcel. So when we provide the report, you're going to get a nice clean header. The cost estimates in the report are all standard with the ASTM guidelines. So this is going to help your client kind of budget what he needs to budget for and what he's going to look for expenses, either on a short-term or a long-term goal with the presentation of the report to the client. It's an on-site inspection. It's similar to a residential inspection, but it can be less intrusive. So Mara, you've asked me this before. Can we do commercial inspections on properties that are occupied? Yeah, we've done them. I've done them. What I try to do is, especially when there's restaurants involved, I try to stay away from, of course, the lunchtime rush or dinner rush. So I usually try to get those done in the morning while they're prepping. My father's a chef, so I grew up in kitchens as well too. So I know how to look at stuff and get around the kitchen, the staff without being a bug. We're looking at kind of the whole assessment of the shell and the contents of the shell as well too. We also look at the big costs, the parking lot. what does a parking lot look like? Do I need to repave that? Do I need to, do I need to repaint all the lines? Is the asphalt just in a mess? Is it just needing to be regraded? But we're also reporting on services for two purposes: information about the building's condition, and again, we're putting all this information together for you and your client to negotiate. How does a commercial residential inspection differ as well too? So there is a big deal of how our presentation or how we present, excuse me, the proposal. So we actually have a girl in the office in Georgia that actually all she does is prepare commercial inspection proposals. So you'll get a nice picture of the property, the assessment, how big it is, blah blah blah, and then that person will send you the documents to you and your client for the quote of what we are what we're going to do, the cost involved as well too, and how we follow the ACM guidelines. So
Okay, so the cost could vary, Brian, based on what
yes,
type or how big or
yep. How big, how old it
or
is,
how long. Okay.
yeah, how much more ancillary service you want to put into there, uh like our sewer laterals that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, that can be part of the commercial inspection as well too. It's a big deal. I've seen it a lot too. We're actually got one guy that's studying, he's getting his HVAC license. So I'm going to try to start an ancillary service for a little bit more in-depth HVAC inspection as well too. Whereas we don't tear gear apart, we're not looking at, contactors and like that. But I'll have a guy, one of my inspectors, who's actually a licensed inspector as well too, give you a good detailed HVAC um, review of all because when you get on those roof, there's 15, 20 units on that roof. And we need to know, okay, how old is each unit? What's the life expectancy? What kind of shape it's in? Is it working? Is it not working? So that's a big deal. So what does the different industrial and excuse me, commercial information, let's see, the different multifamily, office, and industrial, those are three types. The other ones that are more what we do a lot of retail, in Arizona, and churches. We do a lot of churches as well too. Some self-storage is not too much, but hotels not too much. Usually if a chain is selling, it's getting sold to another chain, so it's usually not usually we don't usually look at that. I've done doctor's offices and some hospital stuff, but mostly what you'll see and what you've asked us to do is a lot of retail and churches. The up markets, these are the different places that we're seeing, a big uptick in the inspection requests. Multifamily, so that's more than four houses, or excuse me, four buildings on one dwelling. We've done large rental properties. Sometimes the buyer will, or in the seller will agree that, hey, we don't want the inspector in and out of people's homes because the people are living there. So they're like, we want roof, AC, give us a good assessment of the structure itself, and maybe spot check a couple of empty condos or empty properties to kind of figure out what's going on in each place. But for the most part, it's mostly a kind of a shell inspection, if you will. Restaurants, we do restaurants as well too. Those are real popular. Not so much, the gear itself, because some of the restaurants will pull all that gear out as well. But I'm looking for health and safety issues as well. Medical buildings, office warehouse, car washes. That's kind of our big thing down here, because car washes. These are the ones that we're starting to see a decline on. And Mara, you could probably kind of agree or add to this as well too. These are the kind of buildings that we're just not doing as much as, banks, shopping malls. I know personally two of my two of my big shopping malls that I grew up with when I was a kid, Metro Center and PV Mall they're gone. So shopping malls are kind of blasé. They're not happening anymore. But there's some office spaces. What we're starting to see more too is more big shell buildings as well too, just the shells. So we can still inspect those and give you a good report as well too.
Brian, do you guys go anywhere in the state of Arizona? And I sold, well, a gas station, they call it also a C-store, but it was mixed with a car wash, and that was
Yeah.
a totally in-depth because of the
Yep.
equipment. You had to get
Yeah.
information on the pumps, like
Yeah.
that is still common. People want to buy gas stations,
Gas
so
stations, yeah, especially with
yeah,
that with the wash the car wash that's there too. But you got to remember too, Mara, when we buy a gas station, we're going to have to get environmental involved as well too.
I
That's
was
that's
just
the
gonna ask that question about the phase one or phase two.
yeah, super
Do
fun
you,
site. So we had a seller release that information already, and the tanks had already been inspected because that's not Brian's scope, but my client still had an inspector go through the building and the electrical, the
yeah,
plumbing, the roof, all that. So there's multiple inspections, and
there
that's why
is
we
multiple.
have a
Yeah,
lengthy inspection time
very,
frame.
very lengthy. It can
Yeah,
become very, very overwhelming,
yeah,
especially when we get to that EPA inspections, soil retention stuff. Sometimes there's soil testing if it's possibility there's been a leak on the property as well too, from gasoline or oil, anything like that. Anything
yeah,
with store with oil. So yeah, that's
yeah,
becomes a big deal. Yeah.
yeah.
But
That
we do
one's
have
very interesting though, because you have to also deal with a contract. There's one or two guys that actually hold the contracts for the petroleum out here in the state. And then,
Cochise.
yeah, and then do you partner with Circle K or Exxon for all your marketing, and they change all the credit card? Yeah, there's a lot. It's
There's
fun.
so much.
It's fun though. You're
Yeah.
like, dang, it's still the wild, wild west. But so do you guys go anywhere in the state, or are you guys specific for commercial?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone out as far. I know we've done. I've gone out, or David, one of my other commercial inspector, he's gone as far as Globe, Tucson, Phoenix, North Phoenix, Payson, Prescott. I've done Payson. I've done Prescott. Uh, if it's we can work. I mean, if you really get into a pinch, because you're really not going to find an inspector up in northern part of Arizona, to be honest with you, that's actually trained to do commercial and knows what he's looking at. So you might get assessed a travel charge, if you will, but it's usually if we're going to be at a commercial, we know we're going to be there all day, especially a good size building. So we try to we might ask for a little bit of a travel charge, but yeah, we can get it booked up. And Mara, what is the typically? That was the other thing too. I was never 100%. Is there an inspection period like residential? Is it longer than
There
10
is
days?
for commercial, yeah. Well, depending on the property, anywhere from 30 days to 90 days, and it can get extended, because if you're looking and dealing with planning and zoning and that's
Yeah,
part of your time period, yeah, you want, it's your
right.
due diligence. It's a little different than residential, but yeah, it's, you make that out in the letter of intent or do an addendum too, if you have to extend it. So,
Right. Okay. That's good to
yeah,
know. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely. So this is where I kind of think, like, as like you had just said too, is it's fun. It's there's more involved in this transaction. And realtors, a lot of good realtors think of themselves and put themselves into that business decision and not an emotional decision. They're looking at the whole the big picture. What's the maintenance cost going to be? Is this building going to make money for my client? Is it going to be a burden to this client? Is it better to buy than rent? Can I operate the business from this building? So these are all the things that I always like to see, and a lot of my realtors will look at this as well too, and say, yeah, that's for sure. This is something we need to look at.
Here's a question too, Brian. If you're a landlord and and I love talking about this with the business owners of depending on their type of loan, they can bring in tenants, right? Has to be a percentage below.
Yeah.
I think tenants can be 49% or lower. I think. Do you guys go in and inspect the tenant improvements before the tenant moves in or during to ensure that they have not jeopardized the property in any way?
We have,
Okay.
yeah. We've done, it's just like new construction. We'll actually go in and been asked to go in to do like a phase inspection or a very limited scope inspection as well too. David did that as well. He had one over on Cave Creek and Bell Road. It was an older building, but they had a lot of plans to do a lot of work with it. So he actually talked the homeowner, the buyer, the seller, excuse me, and the buyers to work together and get him in during the process as well too. Look at how are they putting stuff together? Is it, per building code? Is it, we're not
Yeah.
code inspectors, but we're making sure that, because Mara, you've done this as well too. There you might be dealing with a landlord that's not even from this country, and
Correct.
he's
Well, and I think of like a nail salon going in, great, but do they have the correct exhaust system to get the
right,
smells out that doesn't affect the other tenants or
right,
maybe a pet mat or whatever, right? So noise, sound, you're dealing with a
yeah,
lot of water. So it's
yeah.
so many different issues that tenants can bring, but
There is, yeah.
so
The
that's good
one
to
that
know.
I always, what's that?
I didn't know you guys would go in and check that out. So
Yeah, because I had one I did. It was an older building over in Peoria, and it was a smaller, retail. It was maybe 5, 6 buildings. 3 of them were occupied. The one at the end was a cigar shop, and it was just wafted
yeah,
into every bill. I'm like, this is, and I didn't say a thing to alarm anybody, but I grabbed the buyer actually came up and went, "Can you come here for a second?" And we walked into that last suite, and I went, and he went, "Oh my God, I didn't realize it got down here." I'm like, "Yeah, well, that's changing as well too." I think a lot
yeah.
of they're making it so well, there is state regulations, but there's filtration systems now that are put in place so that smell doesn't waft into the next suite. So like, these are like a couple of things you see on the board here. Some things that my realtors always look at. What they're looking for their clients as well too. So, um, this is over the overview of commercial building inspection. So I got to perform a due diligence. I've got to look at all the assessments. I've got to follow the criteria, the ASTM guidelines. I'm estimating the cost of current and future major repairs over $3,000. So I have to put in my report, parking lot needs to be resurfaced. The approximation of costs would be and I'll always give you a range, so you have some sort of thing to work at. So we actually have to put that in a report again to help you and your client negotiate the purchase. It's just ASTM guidelines. User, that's the purchaser. The consultant is me, the inspector. Physical deficiencies, the presence of conspicuous defects, or material deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance. How many of you have heard that from your inspectors? What do you think of the house, Brian? It's just a lot of deferred maintenance. That's the stuff that's supposed to be repaired has not been repaired, and stuff that's been supposed to be serviced is not being serviced. A lot of deferred maintenance. Things are just going to lay out and have been laying out. And we need to fix it. So this is where I kind of like to talk about the PCA, the property condition assessment. So this is kind of like my report, my presentation to the client as far as written form. Includes the site conditions and the building conditions. Remember, it's an opinion. Okay, this is my opinion, my professional opinion on the property. It's based on a visual inspection, and it identifies the significant physical defects. There's a lot of different issues with stuff that's hidden and stuff that's actually, I can see it right away too. Life safety issues as well too. So the people always ask me too, do you guys do not an EPA, but a disabled veterans or disabled assessment as well too? That's a separate inspection as well too.
What do
Sometimes
you
we can
mean
get
by that? Like walking in, is it
it,
handicap?
yeah, the ADA compliances. So do
Oh,
we
okay,
have?
so that's a separate.
It's a separate deal. Usually the state it mandates those to be kind of a separate, different inspection as well too.
Oh,
But
interesting. That I didn't know. So you would do that on
yeah,
like maybe restaurant
yeah,
or
yeah. Make sure
only
there's
certain.
yeah. I got to make sure the door
Right?
swings a
Mhm.
certain way. I've got to make sure there's a ramp. Um, Now they're making I don't know if you've probably seen them. They're actually making the ramps to have corrugation to them, so there's texture to them, so they're not slippery. So there's a lot of things in the ADA compliances that people don't really realize. But also with the ADA compliances, we're also dealing with what we call life safety. Is the exit signs available? Is there a smoke? Is there smoke detector? Is there a fire alarm? Is there an exit sign that works to make sure you know where the right of life is? So with all those things too, we actually report on as well. So there's a lot of things there that people don't really take in consideration. And it's usually the older buildings. I've done some really older. I did a gold gas station. It was an electrical gas station. They did electrical work in the back on cars as well too. But the building was built in 1950 and nothing was compliant to today's building practice. So these things were addressed as if you're going to build, because they're going to wipe it out and they're kind of rebuild another gas station there, but they were going to still use the shell. But they're going to have to bring things into today's building practice. And that's the thing you have to kind of explain to your client as well, is bringing things up to today's building practice because you're going to have to get it permitted. So
Yeah.
these things have to
So
be brought up.
why would a seller go through your EPA inspection versus just a contractor coming in and giving them estimates? What's a good?
There, you said it. You're right there. The estimates. We're not there to sell them anything. That's not our job. A contractor is there to sell something and to provide a service. He's there to look for work. I'm not there to look for work. I'm there to assess the property and an unbiased opinion to give that client the best idea of what this kind of condition this building is in, without having to worry about the client going, well, he's selling me a roof that I think maybe need it, and you know how HVAC guys are. We're not walking around away from this building unless we find at least $400 or $500 worth of extra service that I can sell to them as well. We're not doing that. We're giving you an assessment of the property. So the benefits of conducting a personal property assessment is gaining a technical understanding of the property, identify the physical deficiencies, some estimation of costs, like I said, stuff of the bigger ticket items, help you to power to negotiate terms, and mitigation of exposures of future liability. Again, age of the units, some trip hazards, some safety hazards that could cause a lawsuit, some physical damage that again could cause. I have to look at it when I'm walking the property and writing up my notes as I'm looking for potential safety issues as well too. So we'll look at a building a lot differently than a contractor will too, Mara. A lot of, because the contractor is just going to look at it and go, okay, we can sell you some stucco repair. But I'm looking at it, yeah, you need to have a stucco repair here because there's mesh sticking out the wall 3 inches and it's sharp. Somebody's going to get caught on it. So that's the difference there too. So the ASTM in the industrial standards, American Society of Testing Materials, that's the acronym, requires a proposal with a clearly defined scope of work. So that's basically the proposal that we send you from our office. Modify the scope to meet your client's needs. So he said, you know what, Brian, we're not too worried about the interior. All I want is a roof the ACs, the site, the building. Okay, we'll rewrite the proposal so it meets your needs. Provide information, status, and history of property systems, giving you a full detail of how many ACs on there, what's the brand, how old they are, so we all have a good idea of how old the gear is. Choose a qualified firm. Are they following the ASTM guidelines? And be open to further inspections. This is again the ASTM, revised ASTM to include the American Disabled Act ADA accessible survey. So that's that secondary inspection that I was telling you about with the ADA compliancy. These are just some other different testing materials as well too. It reduces the liability, the workmanship, and all that as well. We don't do load counts, we don't do engineering counts. I'm not going to do bearing walls, and it's not anything like that. It's not an engineered stamp or anything like that. It's a non-biased opinion of the commercial property at the day of the inspection. So we can get technical. We can get technical by putting technical people onto that inspection, like Mara said. Your EPA guys, your guys that test the soil, some real nerds, but they know what they're doing.
Brian, this is sorry, I interrupted you.
Yep.
When I get questions popping in my head, I just blurt them
Yeah.
out. So on a commercial building with city, county, do you guys ever check out the sewers, and how is that the owner's responsibility? Negotiation, like what examples, I guess, have you seen or done any, or?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. We have had one. We did. It was funny too. It's because it relates to what you had asked me about checking on the building and its process of repairs during a major renovation. So we had one that we had found a lot of old iron pipe that was crushed. It had like almost $35,000 worth of underground work that needed to be done as well too.
Wow.
They ended up redoing all the piping. They relined everything. But what they didn't do is when they started tearing the walls out and they started, getting things moving, one of the trucks, it was really sad because he was driving over this soil that wasn't made to be driven on, and the truck sank into the mud and crushed the brand new pipe. And we went back because they asked us to make sure, hey, double check that sewer, because they said they fixed it. We want a good third party unbiased. My sewer guy says, I can't get the camera into the sewer. It won't go in. It's like 4 feet, 5 feet. So we pulled it back and slowly pulled it back. And you could see the pipe was actually, it was a 4-inch pipe, was crushed down to 2 inches because the truck had driven over the pipe. It was an easy fix because it was at the outside of the building. But it was like you said too, Mara, it's just checking on things during the assessment time of when the building is going through a TI, and making sure things just don't get smashed. They're not, you would never have known it had been crushed. I mean, it already had been passed by the city, for the new sewer, and they buried it, they backfilled it, but it wasn't tamped and it wasn't asphalted yet. So that's a good example. What else for plumbing? We do, especially the good one is the apartment complexes. We've done those as well too. Those are the ones I really tried, especially older complexes downtown. We'll do, those, maybe they're not huge apartment complexes, but they're pretty good size. That's one of the first things that I really try to have the client to accept is, get the sewer lateral done. There's nothing worse than having to displace a family because the sewer's backed up, and now it's just not only just a family, it's families, and it's costly. So yeah, that's a good point. So like I said, it's not technically exhaustive. We appropriate the due diligence. It is not necessarily technically exhaustive. The PCA attempts to seek a balance between the value of the information obtained and what's there. Key parts, the walkthrough survey, that's basically my inspection, and the opinions of the probable cost to remedy physical deficiencies as well too. So these are the main parts of the, what makes up that report as well too. The walkthrough survey, the objective is to provide a description of the building's components, how it's made up. Is it stucco? Is it, studs? How is the truss components made up? Is it conventional? Is the framing in good shape as well? Identifying potential liability. Again, trip hazards, something that somebody can get hurt on. And then just the general physical condition, elevations, make sure everything's sloping away. A lot of these bigger complexes, I actually spent a lot of time in that parking lot, just making sure everything grades away from there and there's somewhere for that rain to go. The parks, the drives, and the walks would be included in that as well. So the structural roofing system, foundations, the plumbing, the HVAC, the life safety, and the interiors. So there's a lot involved in a commercial inspection as well too. So it's just not just standing in front of the building going, okay, let's get on the roof. So there's a lot of things on there.
Correct. I mean, even in the parking lot, if something were to happen to someone's vehicle, that's a lawsuit. If someone
Yes.
were to get hurt, or the light were to fall down, or someone get electrocuted, or
Yes.
there's things you just don't think about, the what ifs, and it could. Or do you guys ever check if there's fissures, like if the parking lot were to cave? I mean, that's another vehicle or someone getting hurt too.
Yeah, that's a good question too. Again, we've had sinkhole issues. You've actually seen, I don't know if, does anybody live up here in North Phoenix? I don't know if anybody.
Lisa, our broker, does.
Okay. She probably remembers the sinkhole at Desert Ridge.
Is that the new homes?
No.
Oh, that's separate. Okay, the new homes up there, they were sinking. The houses sinking, but yeah.
There was another issue there, but this is actually a physical sinkhole. It was in front of Desert Ridge. It was right in front of the that restaurant there. There's a medical plaza, but there was a multi-use parking lot. So there's a lot of different stuff going in. There's a lot of traffic in there. But what had happened is the irrigation system, the system that allows the rainwater to fall into and then evacuate, imploded on itself. And this is the thing, there's too many people start pointing their fingers back. Well, it was the engineer's fault for not putting a larger cast in there. It's the building's fault because they weren't doing maintenance on it. So that's what happens a lot of time too, is you get a lot of finger pointing. So we try to alleviate that by putting this up front first, so we know, and your client knows, okay, who's responsible for this parking lot? Is it me, or is it the landlord that owns, and I'm just buying a section of this parcel? So that's always good to know as well. We'll take I actually like to do a Google search on that property, and I can actually do a measurement, and I usually provide an aerial of the building with the square footage. So you have a good idea of what the square footage is on that building as well too. And give you kind of a look of what's going on. We do have a drone operator as well too. Some people ask that we have drone flying over and just some photographs. We can do that as well too. Yeah, this is just basically just going to go over the same things of what we do as far as cost analysis for you guys as well. Just kind of go over this again. The cost is tailored to a specific property. In larger buildings are quoted based on an overall, how hard is it to inspect, the age of the building, square footage, type of business. If we're going to be getting into an occupied building that we're dealing with multi tenants, and then we can coordinate add-on services, the environmental, the ADA stuff as well too, the sewer camera. Those are all ancillary services, like I said. And we can negotiate this as well too. I hate keep saying this, but sometimes they just want a good assessment of the exterior roof. It's always the roof, always the roof. How's the roof, Brian? How's the HVAC, So that's always a big deal. Here are, if you want, guys can screenshot this if you want. These are the phone number and the email, and we can actually do online commercial inspection requests for you as well too. I think you just need the address, and I don't think you need the parcel number. Taylor's really good about pulling that information up as well too. So even if you have the physical address, she can get that prepared for you. Very, very quick too. She's very quick to get those over to you. I know with commercial inspections, it becomes, there's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of parts of this that can become very confusing, but with a good inspector and a good negotiator, as you guys are, usually you can make this a pretty easy transition for your client. I think you're as good as your inspector,
Yeah.
Does anybody have questions?
I do. Brian, can you, or Mara, do we have a copy of a sample of your inspection report?
I was going to ask you. I can send you a copy. Mara, I do have one online.
That'd be great, because then we can upload it with this class. That'd be awesome.
Yep. I was gonna. I have my notes here to go. Ask Mara if she wants a copy. Anybody else? Questions or concerns?
No, I think it was a great, Brian.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, like I said, it's
Yeah.
I sometimes this kind of presentation get really technical, and I didn't want to just fill your head up with stuff. Really, but I was just trying to get the basics out of what you can expect as far as from what you can get from an ASTM certified inspector.
Are you ever doing land at all? I know that it's different, soil engineer and stuff like that. So that's.
No, and it's funny too, because I just was asked to do that as well too.
Yeah.
And I have an environmental engineer that I've been working with down here in town, Mara. He's really good.
Okay. Well,
He also does.
What?
He also does some older homes, where we have radon.
No.
Not the R word. No, like lead-based paint and asbestos.
Okay. Can you share that information with us? We have a vendor list, so the agents have access to that. But I think it would be good, even if, double checking. It's hard with land, right? If there's a septic in there, but it's never been used, or a water well, or, I mean, those are different inspectors, but I mean.
Yeah. Especially when you're building in a remote area as well too, and you're going to use well water. You're talking about how well, because I used to build out in Rio Verde, and that was there were some big issues, and there's water issues in Rio Verde now, as you guys know.
Yeah.
That's just the city of Scottsdale trying to get the grubby hands on that. But it's the houses with the wells up there are fine. It's those that don't have wells and are hauling water in. That's the problem. Yeah. So it's good to know. My mother-in-law still lives out there as well too. So we still get you're not gonna believe what they want now, Brian.
Yeah. No, this is good. Do you guys have any other questions? Okay, so you're gonna get us an example of a report, and then
I'll email you a copy of a report we have.
It's your environmentalist person.
Yep. Yeah. I'll text you that. I'll text that over to you. I have my phone, so I'll just send it over to you.
Okay.
All right.
I've known Brian a really long time, you guys. He was an electrical contractor before an actual inspector, and he never talks about it, but he's just use him on residential too, because he's just very calming. He's just factual, and he's like, yeah, Mara, don't buy this house, or don't buy this property, or yeah, it's fixable. There's nothing majorly wrong, right? So emotion and residential, numbers on the commercial side, that's truly what it comes down to. So
yeah, I wish you guys all the luck. I know we're still kind of battling with the election year, but you guys will kick tail.
Oh, we're fine. Yeah. Yeah. It's all good, man.
It's all good.
Yeah. All right. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Brian.
Take
Okay.
care.
Bye.